227 young adults have been arrested and charged since the Queensland Government introduced its new youth crime laws 3 weeks ago. Queensland Police believes the full impact of the legislation will be seen soon. Joining me now is Criminal Justice and Criminology Associate Professor at Bond University, Dr Terry Goldsworthy. Welcome to the show, Terry. So what do you think of these numbers? Are we seeing are we setting ourselves up for more adult criminals in the future by arresting all these people? Or is this a good thing for a more secure society?
Look, this is short-term data, so we can't read too much into it. What it does tell us is that in the overall context, we know that there's a problem with youth offending in Queensland. Over the last 5 years, we saw an 8% increase in the rate of violent offending of youth offenders, and we saw a 50% increase in the proven offences against young people in Queensland. So there has been a youth crime crisis in Queensland that's finally been accepted by the government that has come into power. In terms of, people, argue against getting tough on crime, people go to jail, they just learn how to be better criminals, etc. That all depends on what the rehabilitation programs and opportunities are in that environment when young people are incarcerated. So there is evidence to suggest that if you have suitable programs in place when young people are incarcerated for serious offences, that they can in fact have a lesser recidivism rate than those who are diverted from the criminal justice system. So I think we need to see what the government's going to do in terms of those rehabilitation programs to bring these people back out at the end of their terms of imprisonment, and see what they can do to integrate them with job skills, education, etc. The other thing with these laws is I think we need to be careful. I don't think they're going to make much difference in terms of imprisonment rates for most of the offences that they relate to. The ones I think will see a great difference will be murder, manslaughter and unlawful killing with one punch. Those are the offences where you'll see mandatory sentencing bite on young offenders. The other offences, it's still going to be up to the discretion of judges as to whether they send a young person to jail or incarceration. And we know from the Children's Court annual report that only about 6% of youth offenders, when they appear in a court matter and go through the court system, end up getting a detention sentence. So I don't think we'll see any great change to that.
Now, Terry, I've read conflicting reports about where youth crime rates are going in Queensland. Are they actually rising or falling?
No, they're definitely rising. What the key confusion is, and it often gets misquoted, is that people have looked at ABS data set, and it's the unique offender rate. And that means that the ABS look at youth offenders, unique youth offenders. So in a 12-month period, they will count each offender once and once only. So if Terry Goldsworthy was a youth offender and I got arrested 15 times, I would only get counted once, even though I've committed 15 sets of offences. But what the problem is that has been quoted by the ABC and some other media outlets as being the youth offending rate. And they are totally different things. The offender rate is different to the offending rate. So, we've seen the unique offender rate actually rise in every state in Australia in the last data set, except for the Northern Territory. But what we should be concerned with is not the unique offender rate, it's how many offences they're committing. So it doesn't matter if you've got 5 kids and they're doing it instead of 10 offenders. If those 5 offenders are going out and committing 60 robberies instead of 6, that is a problem. And in that term, we have seen dramatic increases in the rate of offending, okay? So that is where people get concerned, and that's where you do get those contrary claims that there's no great increase, that it's less. We have seen substantial increases in youth offending in Queensland over the last number of years.
And what do you think of suggestions that prevention programs should be more culturally appropriate?
Yeah, look, I mean, that'll apply to a certain group of offenders in terms of culture, etc. I think if you take a broad approach to all youth offenders is the best way to go. And by that I'm talking about where do you intercede? And I always talk about pre-crime, where someone is looking like they're travelling along that continuum and they're going to go and commit a crime. You need to intervene and divert them from that criminal activity. And that comes about through, we know from the youth justice data, young offenders not being engaged in education, not having skills for employment, DV in the house, lack of parental supervision in the house. 40% of the youth offenders in Queensland had used methamphetamine, 80% of them had used some kind of illicit drug. So getting them out of those issues to begin with. Now, if you can't do that and they get into the offending cycle, the community safety comes first. It must be paramount. So that's where this government, I think, has taken its initial steps to ensure that community safety is paramount in terms of stopping those high-end youth offenders. I'm only talking here about serious repeat offenders. We're not talking about shoplifters or first-time offenders at all. These are serious repeat offenders, and they've been declared such by the courts based on evidence. Those are the ones where community safety
Thanks
takes
so much,
precedence.
and I'm sure we'll
And
speak again about the effectiveness of those laws.